All right, welcome to the Hard to Tell Podcast, episode 17. Dexter Henry and Brian Fonseca here. We have a very special guest here today. He is the senior NBA writer at Bleacher Report, also the host of the Full 48 podcast. You guys probably know him formerly from the LA Times, his days at the New York Times. I knew Beck. He was still with the New York Times. I didn't know you. Howard Beck. Howard, how are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it on this freezing cold night.
Yeah, it's freezing, but it is warm in here. We get to talk NBA basketball, which is always good. Howard, it's been a very interesting NBA season thus far, but we're going to get to that a little bit later. We want to talk to you about, obviously, your time as a journalist, too. You were one of the first journalists, at least that I remember, that was working for a major outlet, a paper like the New York Times, and then you kind of went more to the digital side, if you want to say, to Bleacher Report. You're kind of one of the first bigger writers to do that. What was that like for you at that time, leaving the newspapers to go more digital and Bleacher Report?
Yeah, I mean, not sure if I was actually the first. I mean, it was a big deal when I left, which was weird. Yeah, it was weird because that was like my 15 minutes of fame. As soon as I made that announcement, I announced it myself. Somehow managed to do that on Twitter that day before anybody else found out, which was a success or a victory in itself. But all of a sudden, like Deadspin was writing about it, and I think like the New Republic was writing about it, and like. Which, look, you know, I'm not so egotistical as to think that had anything to do with me. It's the fact that I left the place I left for the place I went to. I left the New York Times to go to Bleacher Report, and that doesn't happen. So it was a huge leap for me personally at the time and professionally. It was a difficult one to make. But, you know, by that time, you know, Adrian Wojnarowski had been at Yahoo for 6-7 years by that point, I think. And he certainly, when he made that move, Yahoo was a search engine, you know. Yahoo
thought about that in terms of sports, right?
No, but they didn't have any journalists working there. There was the search engine, which is what they began as in the 90s. There was, you know, Yahoo Shopping. There was Yahoo Fantasy Sports, but there was no Yahoo Sports coverage. There was no Yahoo News coverage. Yahoo Entertainment. There was nothing. So when Adrian made that move, and several others did too at the time, Tim Brown went there to cover baseball, and some others followed. Mark Spears eventually went there. To me, that was the first wave. Like that was kind of like the pioneering wave. Although even before that, you know, FoxSports.com had in various incarnations starting in the late 90s, had hired people, laid them all off, hired new people, laid them all off. They keep doing that all the way through to today. So, I mean, to me, the leap of faith part of it was just going to a place, Bleacher Report, that had never employed, you know, professional journalists before as writers out in the field. Right. You know, that was the part. Like they had people writing for them, but they didn't have people who were established. And I was taking, you know, it was a bit of a risk, obviously. I was leaving the most established institution in journalism you could possibly find. So leaving the Times was going to be tough no matter where I went if I ever left. I hadn't intended to leave. Leaving to go where I went made it twice as unsettling. It was difficult. There were a few friends of mine who shall remain nameless who I absolutely just wore their asses out because for the month before I took the job, I was calling one or several of them every day saying, what about this? What about that? What do you think of this? And just like needing that guidance because it was tough. It was really difficult. I always viewed myself as a newspaper guy. I loved working for the Times. And obviously that's, you know, you don't get any higher than that in our business. And so I had never even thought about leaving. So when Bleacher Report had come along and started recruiting me, you know, initially I didn't even give it much thought. And then as it became more intriguing and I started to seriously have to consider it, then all of a sudden I had this like, you know, strange feeling like, oh my gosh, am I actually going to leave the New York Times? Am I friggin' crazy?
Were you crazy? What can you say now?
I was not crazy.
That's a check.
No, the good news is I'm still here and still, doing decent stuff, and my career is fine. It's been 4.5 years. Happy at Bleacher Report. They've let me do a lot of really fun stuff. the irony is there are things that I have been able to do there that I couldn't have done at the Times, even in terms of like long form writing, because that wasn't my job at the Times. My job was this very specific slot to just churn out mostly Knicks copy, but a lot of NBA copy, and Bleacher Report gave me the latitude and the freedom, the time to develop these longer pieces, which have been the stuff that I'm most proud of. But I also have the podcast. I've been able to do a bunch of TV and radio, things that I couldn't do while I was at the Times. And so, I don't regret the move for a minute. Doesn't mean that I wasn't slightly crazy to make the jump at the time, because I couldn't know where this was going at the time. There's only so much assurance they can give you. But they offered this intriguing array of different things I could do, other boxes I could check, and different ways to kind of, explore the craft that was beyond just, okay, crank out 270 stories a year, which is what I was doing at the Times.
Well, all that being said, what would you say, given like the newspaper background and everything you have, what could you say about the future of newspapers, like as you see it? I mean, did that even factor into your
No
at all?
No, and that gets asked a lot, like, oh, well, hey, you were really smart to go. You were really no. I mean,
it would seem like on the surface that you may have left ahead of like the curve, so to speak.
All right, but so the Times has had cutbacks within the last 12 months or whatever. But the Times had cutbacks in terms of both buyouts and layoffs, I think twice in the 9 years I was there. That's all. I mean, that's always going on. They cut back, they grow again. Their newsroom, I still think, is well over, I think, 1,100 journalists or something. It's the largest newsroom in the country by far. I never, ever, ever worried that the Times wouldn't be there somehow,
right,
or that I wouldn't have a place at the Times. That was never my concern. If that had been my concern, I would have been looking on my own actively, as opposed to leaving because this kind of dropped in my lap. Again, I wasn't looking in 2013 when these guys came along. I worry about newspapers in general. I worry about the LA Daily News, where I used to work. I worry about the Ventura County Star, where I used to work. I worry about the Davis Enterprise, my first newspaper that I worked at out of college. I worry about newspapers in general all over the country, because the business model has been undermined by 1,000 different factors over the years. And newspapers, I still think, are critically important.
Yeah.
And if they die, there's nobody else doing the important work. I mean, we just saw it this week. The Indianapolis Star is the paper that did all of the most important work on Dr. Nasser and with regard to the gymnasts and Michigan State. So yep. Without newspapers, without journalists going and doing the hard, dirty work every day to, ferret out these stories, especially at the local level, there will always be people covering, various agencies covering Washington, covering politics. But covering local politics, City Hall in any town USA, and that's what I worry about is the health of newspapers leading to the death of local journalism. But no, with the Times, it's the New York Times. Well, they ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So
with that being said, I actually want to harp on something you just said about local journalism and also opportunities for younger reporters who may be trying to do what you do, Howard, or, say, hey, one day I want to be an NBA senior writer. What do you think about opportunities for younger journalists? We asked Ian Begley when we had him here on this podcast. He spoke a little bit about that. But what do you think about the way the industry now is opportunities for young writers trying to get in the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. There's never been I'm not sure if there's ever been a good time to be like a newspaper reporter or be a journalist.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Going through that right now.
And I feel like there are more opportunities than ever now, because of the internet and the democratization of news in that regard. But, okay, great. If you want to work for free or just start your own blog. I mean, so the good news is you can get published. You can put your stuff up yourself.
Yeah.
Can you get paid? Can you get, a good job for a place that actually is going to support and develop you and invest in you and give you health benefits?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
That's clearly the challenging part, right? That's the hard part. To me, and it's hard for me to say this definitively, because I'm not out I'm not in that job market right now or starting my career right now. So I don't know where the best paths are. I always say I have a hard time answering that question whenever anybody younger asks, well, what do I do? Where should I go? What's the best path? You can't. I don't know if you can still replicate the path that I and others of my generation took, because there was a fairly stable, predictable path to the extent that it was ever stable or predictable. But, you know, you get the job at the small town paper. The Davis Enterprise, where I first worked, was 10,000 circulation. And I went from the Davis Enterprise to the Ventura County Star, which was like 100 and something thousand, you know, a little over 100,000. And I went from Ventura, which was 80,000 or something. And I went from there to the New York Times. Like, that's the progression. You go to the smaller papers and you hope to work your way up. The good news is that's still there. Right. Those places have fewer jobs than they had before.
Right.
And they might pay even worse than they did before, which is
most likely.
you know, like it's you know, hard to think that anybody could have actually paid worse than they did before. But it's still there. Like the path is there if you're willing to work that path. And I think that's the big key is if you have to start out at a weekly paper or a blog that, you know, doesn't pay that well, and you got to, you know, hold down a second job or live with your parents or whatever. Like, if you want it badly enough, that's what you do. You just you find your way. You know, it's those jobs are still there. The path is still there. It's just not as predictable or streamlined, I think, as it once was. And you may have to, like I say, supplement or whatever. But you know, again, there's all these websites out there. And there are other ways to go about it. I don't know. Like if I were graduating right now, I don't know. I don't know what the path would be.
Yeah, I think even for me, it's tougher than it was. You know,
I'm literally going
12 years ago. Brian's more recent to that.
Yeah, it's funny because like you were explaining all that, and that's literally what I'm doing right now. It's like I'm with the local newspaper that's weekly. I'm with a blog. I just got out of college a couple years ago. Like this is literally my path that I'm taking right now. So you're kind of like you're speaking to me. You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's cool that Howard's also not, you know, trying to BS anybody, being like, hey, I understand that it was different for my generation. I understand the challenges that there are now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's all roses as a path to success, whatever that might mean to you. But
exactly.
So honesty in that is appreciated, and I think people can definitely appreciate that.
I mean, it's fine to be honest. I wish I actually had some other better answer, though. Like, I mean, really, like, I hate not knowing what that answer should be,
right?
Because it kind of drives me crazy. Like, it's I would like to be able to tell people, hey, look, here's what I did. Go just go do what I did. You'll be fine. Not that my path actually made that much damn sense anyway, either. But it is different now.
It's different.
Yeah.
You can't really say that.
But also the conundrum, I guess you would say, is like, and you hinted at this earlier, but the news, the journalism is always going to be valuable.
Yes.
It's just a matter of whether those people will be able to live off of, you know, giving you the news.
My hope had always been, as we saw, like all these convulsions in the news business starting in, I don't know, I mean, there's always been convulsions, but with the internet coming along in the late 90s and then newspapers all rushing headlong into the internet and giving away their content for free and doing other stupid things. My hope was that, you know, there would be like this kind of, there would be a contraction and then an expansion again. Like things would contract because, okay, all the classified ad money went off to Craigslist and other internet sites, right? And so they lost some ad money. And then, you know, there were all these different ways in which they lost revenue streams. And so it was going to contract a little. And then I thought eventually they'd figure out a new way to monetize. They would, you know, rejigger the business model. And then it would start to expand again. That was always my hope, was like there'd be this accordion effect, right?
Okay.
And I feel like that's the part, like the accordion never came back out.
Yes,
so if you enjoy accordion music, you're really suffering right now. It's just the compression part.
Yeah. They're still trying to figure it out.
but I still believe, I think on some level that that's what's going to happen. Like maybe it's not today and it's not 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now. Eventually I think things have to stabilize, right? Where someone's going to finally figure out what the new business model is. And when that takes hold, things will calm down a little bit. And maybe it's not a business model. Maybe it's simply that we need benefactors out there, people with a lot of money who are philanthropic minded, who are civic minded, who want to put the money into, you know, into a trust, nonprofits or something that then support, you know, local journalism.
Right.
You know, maybe it's just a matter of more of those models kind of taking hold. I don't know, because obviously the old model of just like, oh, someone will pay for display ads and those pay for you to then go out and report news. That model is you know, on life support.
Yeah. What do you think of what The Athletic is trying to do now?
I love it because The Athletic is basically, you know, after, you know, 20 years of, again, newspaper stupidity and self-inflicted wounds of basically saying we're going to give our content away for free.
Cannibalize themselves.
And so the Athletic has said, listen, we're going to declare a few things implicitly. I mean, they've probably said it explicitly too. But like, one, we're going to have reporters who give you stuff that you really want, and that stuff is worth paying for. We have information and well-told stories, and that information and well-told stories are worth something. They're not worth nothing. They shouldn't be free. You should have a means to pay for that. And if you hire the right people and they've got exclusive content that people feel is worthwhile, there you go. So there's a lot of logic to that model. Yep. But it does rely on a couple things. It relies on there being enough of an audience that's willing to pay and continue paying, not just the first time, but when their subscription comes up to renew, and that people aren't going to cannibalize it by, you take the subscription and then you cut and paste it or whatever. I mean, we've seen this ever since internet bulletin boards became a thing, that people would cut and paste entire stories of mine and others in the business on some bulletin board, or then it was, then it was aggregation sites and then everything else. But now everybody's an aggregator. Obviously Bleacher Report's an aggregator, so let's throw that out there right off the bat. But everybody aggregates now. Yeah. And so is anything worth anything if somebody else can cut it and paste it and give it to you for free? So that's the difficult part. But I think what the Athletic is doing is at least try to change the public's understanding of the model again, where it's like, listen, if you want something, you pay for it. This works with music, by the way. Napster came along. You guys remember Napster?
Yeah.
All right, so you guys are younger. Just checking. So Napster comes along, and everybody's like, it's the death of the music industry.
I remember that.
No one's ever going to pay for music ever again. What happens? Apple invents the iTunes Store, says, but you could pay 99 cents. Yeah, but I'm getting it for free. But you could pay 99 cents and put it on this iPod that's like this thick. So people did. Lo and behold, people actually were still willing to pay for music. Yep. And now they're paying for music on 50 different kinds of platforms. And and you can get, all you can listen on Spotify and it worked. They put the genie back in the bottle, kind of. Now granted, the artists would tell you they're not making as much as they used to under this model as they did. Okay. But still, this idea that, once people get something for free, they'll never pay again. Yeah. No, you got to retrain people. You got to convince them, and especially with something as important as journalism. Like, screw what I do. Like, NBA coverage. Like, there's it doesn't matter. It's just the NBA. It's basketball. Who freaking cares?
I care.
But
we're gonna talk about that next.
But coverage of what's going on at your local city hall. Coverage of what's going on in Washington. Coverage of the environment. These things are important. You should want to pay for people to be digging into these things and reporting on them and holding the powerful, whether elected officials or corporations or whoever, to account. Like, that's important. So we just need to, and this is the problem. Journalists are shitty salespeople. We don't do a very good job of convincing the public of our own mission and its importance and why they need to be engaged and why they need to value it and why they need to pay for it. So if we did a better job of that, again, if Spotify can work, if the Apple iTunes Store can work, there has to be a way to get people to pay for news again.
That's great. I think it's a great analogy, and I think you're 100% right. It's spot on.
I hope so.
You're right. As journalists, we have to do a better job of selling that. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we will actually talk what Howard says people might not care about, which is the but we do, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we come back on the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. What's up, listeners? Sometimes how it can be hard just to get from point A to point B. Now, if I have to get anywhere and I don't want to deal with the hassle of public transportation, it ain't hard to tell how I get around. I always make sure to use the best car service app in the game. I'm talking about Lyft. Lyft offers rides in minutes. All you have to do is download the Lyft app, request a ride, and you will be on your way quickly. Lyft is all about happy riders and happy drivers. Take a ride with them and you'll see why 9 out of 10 rides end up with a 5-star rating. Lyft always has amazing offers for new customers, and I'm here to tell our listeners about a great offer today. Lyft is currently offering free ride credit to Ain't Hard to Tell listeners. If you are new to Lyft, then you are eligible, and getting your credit is easy. All you have to do is download the app and use the promo code AHTTPOD to unlock your free credit today. Ain't hard to tell who is the best car app service, so use the code today and ride out loud with Lyft. The best new sports web series is here. It's from Backpack Broadcasting, and it's called The Sports Walk. The Sports Walk is a series where diverse sports fans take a walk and share their views at the intersection of sports and society. The entire first season is now available on Backpack Broadcasting's YouTube channel and backpackbroadcasting.com. See what other sports fans have to say about a variety of issues in the world of sports. Watch all 13 episodes from season 1 and take The Sports Walk today. Welcome back to the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. Dexter Henry joined by Brian Fonseca as usual, and our guest Howard Beck, NBA senior writer for Bleacher Report. And Howard, we talked a lot about journalism in the first segment. We're going to talk a little bit of NBA, which some people care about.
It's not that nobody cares or shouldn't care. I'm just saying it's not the stuff that matters as much. That's all I'm saying. I'm ranking our news categories here.
I would like to be clear that
just putting NBA second.
No, as an NBA junkie, which I am, I'm an NBA junkie. Yes, it does not matter as much as some of the more important things, like anything's going on locally in the community, politics, your family.
There you go.
Those things should really matter. But I do love the NBA, and Howard does cover the NBA. And I guess first I'll start off with you. It's been an interesting NBA season. What have you made of the season thus far? And I think the question I'm sure you get all the time is, can anybody beat the Warriors?
No, nobody can beat the Warriors unless they beat themselves, or they're, as I often say, unless like the bus drives off in a ditch or something.
Which you're not wishing.
No, of course not. But to the first part of the question, what's been interesting about the season? I mean, listen, this is the good news for the NBA and for NBA fans. Like, okay, here we are. It's almost February. We are past the midpoint, the mathematical midpoint. All-Star break's coming up soon, and people still care. They're still watching. Like the inevitability of the Warriors, which everybody feels, teams feel it, fans feel it. The inevitability of the Warriors has not dampened excitement about how, the Thunder are doing, or how Paul George is clicking with Russ lately after not clicking before. It's not stopping anybody from being either riveted or perversely entertained by the utter, dumpster fire that the Cavaliers are right now. So it's not dampening Knicks fans' excitement about seeing Porzingis make the All-Star team, or Tim Hardaway Jr. semi-vindicate that contract. It's probably not even dampening Nets fans' excitement over Spencer Dinwiddie all of a sudden becoming like this, kind of, folk hero in Brooklyn, where, they lose their 2 starting point guards. They lose, they don't have much else to hang their hat on anyway. Like, the basketball continues. Every team keeps competing, whether they think the Warriors are going to win it all or not. Mm-hmm. And so there's still fun things to watch. There's still great basketball being played. And the world keeps turning. But yeah, if all that matters is the championship, if every season is played just for the championship, and by the way, we've gotten to this philosophical moment in the NBA. It's like, well, maybe the championship isn't everything. Like it is, but if truly the Warriors have forced us to reevaluate your value system. If all that matters is the championship and the pursuit of that, mm-hmm. then we've gone from an NBA where you could argue about 4, 5, 6 teams maximum to 1. Yeah. You now have to put that aside for your own sanity, unless you're a Warrior fan, right. Just to say, well, why am I watching? Because the rest of this is fun to watch too. And so it's actually, in a way, it's kind of healthy in that it's forced everybody to kind of reassess and stop doing this all or nothing thing where the only reason to play the season is to see who wins it all in June. So, but yeah, I do think it's unfortunate in a broader sense that we don't have more mystery about it. I don't think it's not that super teams aren't good. There's always been super teams. Yep. The Warriors are like an anomaly to the extreme. No, there's never been a team like this. And this whole thing where stars are joining up in a handful of cities, it is problematic because there aren't that many stars to go around. There aren't enough stars to have teams with 3 and 4 stars and then still have stars anchoring teams in, Memphis and Charlotte and all these other in Orlando. There's a deficit. There's a fixed sum, and so. Right.
So I was going to ask you if it's problematic to the point where you think that would maybe turn fans away from watching the product, because to your point, it hasn't, right? We saw a lot of movement to the Western Conference, or maybe I'm jumping the gun on that.
Last season, there was some evidence that it was hurting local markets or local TV ratings. Like the TNT and ESPN ratings have been perfectly strong. Yep. But there was evidence last season, and I imagine still into this season, that when you looked at the regionals, their ratings were down, which kind of makes sense, right? Like if you are, let's pick on Charlotte Hornets fan, and you have no hope, how often are you turning on the TV and watching? Like if you're the Dallas Mavericks, for that matter, a team that has had success semi-recently, how much motivation do you have to turn on? Now, Dennis Smith Jr. is making you more interested again. Mm-hmm. But last season, what the hell were you turning on a Mavericks game for? Right. And there are too many of those teams, too many markets where there's no hope. And the good news again, too, when I was just talking about like the championship level, there's a fixed time for any of these teams, right? Eventually, the Warriors will start to wither because, like Iguodala and Sean Livingston are really important. They're not as important as the Big Four, but they're really, really important. It's going to be hard to kind of keep that bench going because of cap and tax concerns and just, the reality of adding to a team that's already maxed out in terms of money. There's, always the possibility that, people always talk about, well, maybe Klay Thompson wants to do more somewhere else and have his own team. Yep. I don't know if that'll actually happen, but, injuries will happen. Some aging will happen. Like it's not forever. And it's probably less than 5 more years. Well, 5 years could be a lifetime, but could. It could. And the fact is, like the team that was checking them, at least ultimately in June, was the Cavs, who are absolutely just falling apart, and LeBron, seemingly is going to go somewhere else this summer. So the East will be open again. Boston or somebody will fill that vacuum. In the West, maybe the Rockets are getting there. Maybe some people think the Rockets have a chance to at least push the Warriors. We'll see.
You saying you don't see? I'm going to let Brian.
You were asking before if you thought the Rockets were for real. So that's
well, yeah, and I was going to ask that to Howard, and I was in the barbershop today, and I was having a conversation with my barber and some other people, and one guy in there thought, hey, the Rockets could beat the Warriors. I thought he was out of his mind. I don't think they can. I think they could push them. I think maybe they could win 2 games in the series. Are the Rockets for real, as currently constructed, obviously before the deadline, are the Rockets for real in terms of legitimately pushing the Warriors in the series and possibly beating them?
Like beating them is still going to require that the Warriors do something to themselves, right? Like Draymond gets thrown out of a game or something, or an injury. At full strength, at their best, the Warriors are still better than the Rockets. I don't think there's any question there. Right. But I like what the Rockets have done to at least try to make it interesting, and I think they can make it interesting. They could get a game or 2 off of them. But they have to be nearly perfect to do it. And the Warriors have to have a really crappy shooting night or whatever. But look, here's what I like. I like that they not only did they get Chris Paul, who's obviously a Hall of Fame point guard, but Chris Paul is a pain in the ass defender. He's tough. He's gritty. He's giving you some of what Patrick Beverley did, except on top of it, he also is one of the greatest point guards of all time, whereas Beverley was just good at being a pest. Yes. So you added a guy who you think about for his offense, but actually has made them better defensively right at the point of attack. On top of that, they've got 3 mobile bigs with Capella, Nene, and Tarek Black. Then they brought in Mbamute and PJ Tucker, so they're getting, and they already had Ariza. So now you've got 3 of the best switchable, forward types who can also, hit the open 3. Yep. You're building the kind of team that has a shot, right? If you want to beat the Warriors, you have to be able to. You need mobile defenders who can switch everything to stay in front of shooters, and you need to be, you need to be able to score at their level, which the Rockets can. They're like right neck and neck in terms of offensive efficiency. But you have to bring some defense to the table. And the Rockets, while not at the Warriors level, are far improved over where they were last season. So all of that means there's a shot. And that's the thing. Like most teams around the NBA, that's all they feel. And that was the Clippers before, too. The Clippers felt like, listen, we know we don't have their talent level. We know we can't match them. But we're just good enough that a little slippage by them and maybe we can come out ahead, And that's all you can hope for if you're anybody but the Warriors now is, you know what? I can't get as much talent as them. I can't build what they have. But I can do my best to create a roster that takes advantage of them if there's a little bit of slippage.
So with the trade deadline coming around, Cleveland's obviously somebody that people are going to look to try to make a move. There are a bunch of other teams. Kemba Walker is somebody who's reportedly on the market, so to speak. Are any of these teams, could they make up any ground in catching Golden State on the trade deadline? Or is there anything that we should look out for in general? Like, where could Kemba Walker end up? Does another team do anything?
So Michael Jordan, who of course owns the Charlotte Hornets, got on the phone with the Charlotte Observer the other day and tried to pour like a little bit of cold water on the Kemba Walker stuff.
Are you buying that?
No, not entirely. I mean, look, you want to reassure Kemba that, listen, right. You're our guy. So you don't want to, especially the way Kemba reacted, he clearly was hurt by the rumor. So I think Michael was doing what he had to do. That said, there probably is some reluctance. I mean, they don't have a lot to hang their hat on there in Charlotte. And though they're not going anywhere anytime soon, and they've got cap issues, and they're not a good team, they should be considering trading Kemba, but only for a package that actually helps them unclog the cap and gets them some young talent or picks to start rebuilding again. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like Kemba being traded is a lower possibility. There are all kinds of other teams out there that just have pieces that are potentially offloadable or that they'd like to offload, but it's hard. It's really hard. Like everybody, like the latest rumor, or one of the latest rumors, my buddy Mark Stein says, the Mavericks maybe would part with Wes Matthews. Look, good two-way player, scorer, shooter, still a good defender. He'd be great. Like you could see Wes Matthews. He'd be great for the Thunder, right? They could use a two guard who can actually score as well as defend, right? Great fit. He'd be a good fit with Cleveland too, for sure. He could be a good fit. You can find any number of places for him. Toronto off the bench. Boston needs bench help. He'd be great there. Like you could find a lot of places for him. So the report was they want a first round pick. Well, everybody wants a first round pick. So yeah. Well, okay, but
you could command one.
A low first, maybe.
Maybe a low
so,
first.
But to your
playoff teams.
But to your point, Dexter, this is the whole thing. Nobody wants to give up first round picks in today's NBA.
Right.
Everybody wants a first round pick if you've got a guy. Well, look, I've got a guy. He can help you out. Good luck. Like nobody wants to give up their first round pick. So now it's going to be, well, we'll trade you. And this is like the thing with Cleveland, right? Cleveland doesn't want to have to trade the Nets pick. They don't want to have to trade their own pick. And they're like, well, we'll give you Channing Frye's expiring contract and Iman Shumpert. Well, what the hell are those guys? I got no use for Iman Shumpert and Channing Frye's expiring contract. I'm going to end up buying Channing Frye out and he's going to go to the Warriors. Like, what am I? Like, what's the point of the exercise? Now, if you're the Kings and it's because you don't want George Hill anymore and it was a bad investment, okay, that helps you kind of get maybe somebody off the books that you don't want anymore. But
Cleveland, if they did that trade, which is reported, Winterworks has done a lot of reporting that, they'd be on the books for George Hill's $20 million next year, and when LeBron leaves, and
so and I think it was Joe Varden reported today in Cleveland.com that in fact the George Hill talks are not close. Like it's not nearly as close as had been previously assumed. So point being, it's really hard to get a deal done in the NBA. So look, there will be deals. There's always deals, and there's usually at least one or two that nothing had been rumored about, and they just fall out of the sky, and you don't even see them coming.
Right.
So we'll talk about all the names that everybody's talking about, and it won't be any of those guys, and it'll be somebody that nobody saw coming.
Yeah. And Brian kind of touched on this because I think it's interesting with this trade deadline. If we're in this world of what you said, which is, hey, a lot of teams think, hey, we're never going to have the talent level that the Warriors have. We're trying to keep things close. If things break our way, it can be all good, and maybe we can win the series. Is there? And I'm going to say this specifically to Cleveland.
No.
Is there a player out there? I think the one person comes to mind would be Paul George, but I don't think he'll go to. I don't think he's going to be traded. Is there a player out there that can help Cleveland get out of their doldrums and turn things around for them? Or is this all going to be, they're going to have to rock with what they have?
No, it's not any one player.
Yeah.
Because I think they have too many needs at this point. They need a rim protector. So, the people look at DeAndre Jordan. They need Frankly, they need a point guard. I mean, I don't know if Isaiah Thomas is ever going to be himself again. Derrick Rose is not ever going to be himself again. I think the body of work is long enough now that we can all conclude Derrick Rose is never going to be an all-star again. So he's not the answer there. Dwayne Wade's a nice, point guard off the bench for them, but I don't know that he makes sense in their starting lineup, and they need him on the bench. Kemba Walker would be fun for them, right? Like he'd be great. He'd be what they thought or hoped they were going to be getting with Isaiah Thomas. But good luck getting Kemba Walker again with what you've got, and they don't want to give up that Nets pick. So it's really tough for Cleveland with very little to trade to get something that's going to help them. And if all they come out of the trade deadline with is, say George Hill and, I don't know, a better big, is that enough?
No.
I mean,
No.
I'll say no.
No.
They'll still get swept, most likely.
The key for the Cavaliers is this, and I think it has been from day one, and day one being day one of this season.
Mm-hmm.
The Cavaliers still have a chance to be really, really good if Isaiah Thomas becomes Isaiah Thomas again. Because they gave up Kyrie Irving. Like Isaiah Thomas last season was a fair approximation of Kyrie.
Yes.
The difference between them was fairly small.
Yeah.
But the only way you are getting back to the Cavaliers you were a year ago is to have another guy who can do some of what LeBron does. I wrote this 2 months ago. He's always had that second guy. It was either prime Kyrie Irving years or late prime Dwayne Wade in Miami. He's always had another guy who could score and make plays, break down a defense. You need that. LeBron needs that. Like, it's not enough just to be LeBron. If you're just LeBron, we saw what happened in the finals the first time against the Warriors when he didn't have Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. We've seen other times in his career when he had to carry too much, and now he's 33 and in his 15th season. Like, he's amazing. He's one of the greatest ever. He's superhuman, but there's only so much he can do. So if you don't have that second guy, and they don't, Isaiah Thomas isn't that guy right now. No. So, and you're not going to trade for another player of that caliber, another a top tier all-star. Unlikely. So that means that no matter almost under any scenario, the Cavs go to the playoffs as a much weaker team than they were last spring, which means they're vulnerable if Boston is playing well at that time, or if Toronto gets it together. You never know. Like I was saying, neither of these teams are. I don't have a ton of faith in them.
Right.
But they've got.
You wouldn't be shocked if they upset them.
I think those teams feel a hell of a lot better about their ability to knock off the Cavs now than they did any time in the last 3 years.
Right.
Yeah. As I was going to ask you if you thought they could still get out the East, but
Boston might.
They can. But I think it's gotten a lot steeper.
Yeah, I think it's very concerning what's going on with the Cavaliers. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We come back, we'll talk a little bit more NBA, including the All-Star game. We'll find out if Howard cares as much as I do. I talked about that last week. If he's excited about this year's All-Star game. While we're doing this podcast, the rosters for both teams have been announced. So we know who picked who between Team Steph and Team Wade.
Keyword announced.
Not televised, announced. It's disappointing that way. We'll talk about more when we come back on the In Heart to Tell podcast.
Sports Guru is the place where fans talk about sports via video. All videos are 60 seconds or shorter. Sports Guru makes the video look more professional and fun by adding automated on-screen graphics. You can follow your favorite sports by team, trending, new, or by people you follow, and more. Type in the title of your video and it will auto-magically go into your on-screen graphics. It's just that simple. Tag your teams and publish sports. Let's talk sports.
It ain't hard to tell where to get the latest merchandise from Backpack Broadcasting. Gear is now available via TeePublic. Visit the Backpack Broadcasting TeePublic online store to get shirts, hoodies, mugs, and phone cases. Represent your favorite Backpack Broadcasting shows, including The Sports Walk, Sideline Stories, and of course, the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. Check out the special offers for our podcast listeners at http://t.pub/lic/backpack. Get in the game with your official Backpack Broadcasting gear today. All right, welcome back to the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. Next to having Brian Fonseca with our guest, Howard Beck, senior NBA writer of Bleacher Report. Been talking a lot about the NBA trade deadlines, Cavaliers problems, why we all believe nobody can beat the Warriors.
Right.
All interesting stuff. I'm going to, before we get back to some stuff, NBA, I want to talk about the All-Star Weekend. Obviously, a week before, though, they announced the starters, they announced the reserves early this week from when we were recording this podcast. And then as we were recording this podcast, we saw the picks from LeBron and Steph Curry, the team captains. And this was not televised. You tweeted about how you thought, to quote, it was lame, and I love that word, lame. That's a word I use all the time when I don't like it.
It's like my junior high insult at that point, right? Man, that's lame.
I still like the word lame. I think it applies.
Still works.
Why are you so disappointed, if there were to say, about the league not televising this?
I mean, look, the All-Star game is not that important, and how they pick the All-Star teams really isn't that important. And I don't even care. Like, I don't even get caught up in snubs and all that stuff. Who cares? It's just All-Star weekend. It's an exhibition. But that's why it does irritate me that the players were so opposed to televising the draft. Because, listen, credit to the league for being innovative and for recognizing things that had gotten stale. Yep. So let's do something different. Mm-hmm. We'll have team captains and they'll pick the teams. Okay. We all praised you for it. We all got up and clapped when you announced it. Good job, NBA. Yeah. You're being forward-thinking. You're letting the All-Star game evolve and doing something a little different, recognizing it needs a new twist. But you ruined the whole exercise by now taking that away from us to see the actual process of drafting it. Just seeing these scrambled rosters now, Team Steph and Team LeBron, and we're looking at it and going like, oh, okay, all right, Team LeBron, wow, he's got Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins. Those are Western Conference players, and they're playing on LeBron's team. Wow, how innovative. Who cares? I don't okay, they scrambled the rosters. It's not East-West. It's not like we have deep-seated regional rivalry between the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference in the NBA. This does not actually do anything. So having Steph and LeBron pick, the intrigue of that was to actually see them pick. to see who went first, to see how the other guy responded, to have them be interviewed on camera and say, well, why'd you do that? Why didn't you pick your own teammate? Why'd you let that guy? That was the whole intrigue for any of us who are fans or media. So it's all silly and meaningless anyway. It's not the kind of thing I would normally get that irate about. It's just more like, if you're going to innovate, if you're going to want us to give you all of us to give you credit for doing that, then actually do it. This was a half-assed way of changing it. Yeah. And shame on the players for being so hypersensitive that they didn't think they could do this on camera without it being uncomfortable. Ooh, it's uncomfortable. These are the same guys who go on Instagram every day, killing each other, passive-aggressively liking each other's Instagram posts, who talk trash on and off the court, who create all this drama, and then it's like, oh, but we don't want to have to pick somebody on camera because it might hurt somebody's feelings. Come on.
Really, is somebody's feelings going to be hurt because they're the last person picked? You're an all-star. Yeah. You picked as an all-star. You're known as one of the best players in the league.
So you're the 24th pick. You're only the 24th best instead of the 13th. Really? Which, by the way, Jimmy Butler, multiple-time all-star, 30th pick in the draft the year he was drafted. Jimmy, what do you think matters more to Jimmy Butler? Being picked 30th in the actual draft where it costs you money and prestige, standing, versus, I was only 12th in the All-Star draft. Who doesn't care about that? Giannis Antetokounmpo was the 15th overall pick. Rudy Gobert, not an All-Star this year because he's been hurt. Rudy Gobert was the 27th pick when he was picked. Draymond Green, 35th pick. That stuff matters so much more than where they would be picked in this draft. And I think it was less about the draft order and who goes last than it probably was about, everybody's going to be keyed in on is LeBron going to pick Kyrie, or is Steph going to pick his own team? Yeah, I think it was way more about that stuff, the relationship stuff, and all of the reading into it.
Sounds right.
But
I can see that.
My vision for this thing was always, not just do it on TV. Put Steph and LeBron in the inside the NBA studio with Chuck and Shaq and Ernie and Kenny, with CNN touch screens, John King touch screens, and one of them's got each touch screen, and they grab somebody from the middle, and they pull them to their side, and then immediately Ernie's like, and Steph, why did you take Giannis with your first pick of the draft? And then he has to explain it. And immediately you got Shaq and Chuck just giving him absolute hell. The second LeBron doesn't pick Kyrie, Chuck's killing him for not picking. That would be television. Like that would
we
be.
would not have recorded the podcast during that time.
No,
everybody would have wanted to see it. Well, actually, I try to find a way to watch it and record a podcast at the same time, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah. It would be too good. After all of my advocating for that, I'd be obligated to stay home and watch that.
Speaking of all-star festivities that we have issues with, I have an issue with the USA versus the World format for the Rising Stars game.
I have an issue with you watching the Rising Stars game.
I'm not watching it. But I'm just having an issue with the format of it being 10 players from the United States, 10 players from the world, because you're never going to get the 20 best players, first of all. Second of all, why is it still 10 and 10? Why isn't it? You want the All-Star game to expand to 15 and 15. The Rising Stars should probably do the same thing. But my bigger issue is why are we still doing the USA versus the world thing when players like, I don't know, Karis LeVert, for example, who's a lot better than Frank Ntilikina this year, could have been in the game.
No, I mean, and fair. And look, I'm on the Karis LeVert bandwagon myself. So I he's a guy who's definitely deserving. Look, the rookie sophomore game has always been god awful. Like it's unwatchable. I don't watch Friday night. I don't watch the celebrity game. I don't watch the rookie sophomore game.
Another person doesn't watch celebrity game.
Apologies.
It depends who's in it.
No, I
don't watch it for good basketball.
No, it's look. The beauty of watching the younger stars coming up in the game is watching them in an actual game. What's more fun? Watching Karis LeVert, go, dunk on, DeMarcus Cousins or something in an actual game, or Karis LeVert, dunk on Dennis Smith Jr. So who cares?
I'm with you.
The rookie sophomore game has always been terrible. I think the reason that those rosters are smaller, frankly, I don't know the answer, but my guess would be because there's usually not enough good rookies and sophomores to justify more than 10.
Maybe because it's 40 minutes long. Is that you think that has
maybe?
No, but that's a good point, Howard raised, because this has been a good rookie class overall. You probably look at it. Yeah. But what if you have a year with some bad rookies?
Well, think about it this way.
The Malcolm Brogdon year.
Well, last year for one.
Yeah.
But do this exercise sometime. Go back through go on Basketball Reference or anywhere else where they keep the records of all rookie teams, and because every year people will be like, oh, this guy made all rookie. Look at how shitty most of those players ended up being. There's a ton of guys who made all rookie or all rookie second team, but even all rookie first team, who had crap careers after that. Because the fact is, out of any 60-man draft class, there are really only going to be a couple of all-stars, a few other really good rotation players, and a bunch of guys who barely even have a career or fall out of the league very quickly. So
10 or so have to be picked for the team.
I think it's dangerous to go beyond 10, frankly.
That's a good point.
That's right, yeah. Marshawn Brooks was all rookie.
There you go.
Marshawn Brooks is now.
China. I think he's in China.
Howard,
taking a lot of shots in China.
With that being said, do you, and I don't know if you are going out to LA this year, but
I am.
You are. Do you care at all even about the actual All-Star game? Is that still interesting?
No. The All-Star game, I'm not sure if the All-Star game was ever, well, it was. I mean, you hate doing the old man shaking his fist at the cloud thing, but it was better back in the day. They did try harder back in the day. That's objectively true. Even today's players would admit that.
Definitely.
So it is objectively the All-Star game itself is objectively worse than it used to be. I have my own ideas about how to fix that, but it's hard. It's a long weekend. They put these guys through more than they ever have before. The demands on these guys, they're all exhausted by the time they get to Sunday night. And so that's part of it. They don't want to get hurt. That's part of it. They're all buddies. Then don't want to show each other up probably. That's part of it. But it's a meaningless exhibition. So no, to me, the idea of an all-star game, the way it's played now, where we're just going to jog up and down the court and throw alley-oops and jack a lot of threes, it's not interesting. It's no longer competition. And when people get into it's going to be interesting to see who Steph and LeBron picks because of how the rosters will shake out, or people have talked about experiments where let's do all the bigs versus smalls or whatever. You know why that doesn't actually intrigue me? Because if they don't care about the outcome, then it doesn't matter. The composition doesn't matter.
Right.
It only matters if you're actually trying to use those lineups to your advantage.
Yep.
If you don't care and all you want to do is just keep throwing lob dunks, well, all right.
I told him last
so do you? Yeah. So do you agree?
Contested dunk. I don't care.
Right. So do you agree with Dexter? You had a point about how you think they should just get rid of the All-Star game.
Yeah, I'm actually saying I'm actually in favor of getting rid of the All-Star game, just naming the All-Stars, we know that they're already.
Van Gundy said this last week. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know he said that.
Jeff.
I actually didn't know.
I think Jeff said it on Zach's podcast.
I think you guys would agree with a lot.
Yeah.
And, I didn't listen to that episode of the Low Post, which is actually one of my
All us cranky old men agree.
Yeah, and
well, I agree too.
I just think, hey, let's just have it. Let's just name these guys. We know the honor they have. I'm fine with the skills competition, the 3-point shootout, even the dunk contest. I don't care for anymore. I'm fine with having those for the fans.
Could be good this year.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if they did away with the All-Star game, I personally would not miss it.
Yeah,
However, it is still a massive revenue generator for the league. It anchors the weekend itself, which is a massive revenue generator. It's a signature event. Like, the NBA is never going to get rid of it, but they could make it better. So my thought on this has been so here's
right.
I understand all the I already stated all the reasons why these guys don't try as much, right? Mm-hmm. All right, first of all, shorten the damn game. It's too long. This is not a real game. You don't have to. You're not obligated to go 12-minute quarters. Make them 10-minute quarters. Make them 8-minute quarters. Running clock is another one I thought of. Yeah. So either or even both. 10-minute quarters, running clock.
Yeah.
Make it shorter. It drags out way too long.
Yeah.
And because of that, the pace is that much more plodding too. So speed it up. Maybe that'll add a little bit more, tension or momentum to it. That's one. The other part is this. So nobody plays any defense. We know this.
Yes.
This year, for the first time, now I've said in the past, I thought if you should attach some stakes like playing for charity. They are doing that this year. I'm sure I'm not the only one who ever suggested it, but I'll take credit anyway. So each team is going to pick a charity to play for, right? But they're leaving it at that. I think that's not far enough. My idea was this. Pick a charity that you're each playing for, but don't just have it be like the winner gets X amount for their charity and the loser gets X amount less for their charity. Mm-hmm. Pin it to stuff within the game. So, make the last 2 minutes of every quarter be its own thing. So it's 25-20, and now we have another clock that just says 0-0. Whoever wins that last 2 minutes of the quarter, that's an extra $10,000 for your charity. Or whoever holds the other team under X number of points for the last 2 minutes. Do it at the end of every single quarter. Because what people have said in the past was what the All-Star game what they do is players would they start off competing a little bit, then it would wane. The middle 2 quarters, they'd start dicking around a bunch. And then late in the fourth, guys would start getting serious. And then all of a sudden, guys are starting to go at each other because now they all of a sudden decide, well, now it's time to win. I want to win. Well, if you create, it's an artificial tension, but still create that tension at the last 2 minutes of every quarter of these shorter quarters that are now 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, okay, boom, clock hits, time to ramp it up a little bit.
Right.
So again, you're not going to have to go all out for 48 minutes. Maybe it's only 40. And of that 40, it's only the last couple minutes of each quarter. But there's something on the line. It's a little bit of pride, and it's a little bit of pride in the charity that you picked. And the people at home know it because it's on the TV and it shows the reset there. It shows what charity you're playing for and what's at stake. Just give them something. Players have to convince themselves or trick themselves, even in the course of an 82-game season, right, to get themselves motivated. They can psych themselves out. They can get themselves motivated for a couple of minutes in an All-Star game to actually start playing hard. And that would make it more fun again. I don't want anybody to get hurt either. I don't want them to go all out. I'm not expecting it to look like Game 7 of the finals. I'm just saying there's something in between, and we can find that.
Right. Adam Silver, he's probably not listening to our podcast.
I'll send it to him.
Yeah, because I'm a fan of it. I like it. I think it actually would help the game. We're going to get off the NBA for a second. Today, as we record this podcast, the news are broke that the XFL is back.
Oh, God. Our producer's happy about that.
Our producer who is excited about this.
And we don't care.
For those people who listen or watch this podcast that are old enough to remember when the XFL first came out in 2001, it's a long time ago. I was just going to college. He hated me.
I was 7.
That's the only thing I remember. Is the guy with the jersey that said he hated me.
Which was a pretty dope.
And Tommy Maddox was there.
Howard, you tweeted about the XFL. I will not get into too much of that. Your thoughts on the XFL coming back? Are you excited as much as Matthew Cleveland?
It's funny because I grew up on football was my favorite sport. The NFL was my sport. The NFL is the reason I became a sports writer, even though I now don't even actually watch it anymore and I don't care.
Both of us.
So, I've been off the NFL and off of football in general for a long time. So I have a pretty jaded view of this in the first place. But even if I were still embracing football as a sport, the idea of the XFL coming back. One, why? I don't feel like
I have a theory as to why.
I don't feel like anybody was clamoring for maybe somebody's clamoring for. But
no, but I think that Vince McMahon and whoever he's working with is just trying to capitalize on 45's presidency.
Yes,
and that crowd kind of rising to prominence over the last couple of years.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, there are people out there. I think it's a tiny minority of the sports watching public, but there is some group out there that you hear from now and then on Twitter who I think really truly do believe that somehow the NFL is coming unglued because a handful of guys sat for the anthem. I'm sure that there's a segment there. I'm sure that Vince McMahon will tap into that segment. I'm sure that politically that's what he wants to do.
Yeah,
that's not enough people to fund, to create the revenue stream for a professional football league. But also, look, there's not enough talent. There never has been. There wasn't enough talent for the XFL to exist the first time. Yeah. I'm not sure there's enough talent for the USFL when they tried it,
or the FXFL a couple years ago.
There was a what?
Yeah.
There you go. So they try. Okay, so I remember this because the Brooklyn Bolts were actually in Coney Island.
I do know.
The FXFL, they tried to do They tried to do like a minor football league, 4-6 games in a season. They took like 4 teams. This was literally a couple of years ago. And what they tried to do, their attempt was to become the developmental league of the NFL. They never got to that deal. They folded after like 2 seasons.
Yeah. So I mean, look, we had there was the World.
Josh Freeman was there.
Do you remember there was something called the World League of American Football at one point?
I actually do. I remember.
Yeah. So they had teams in Europe. So there was that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, every so often somebody tries one of these and never works.
He's tried it already and it didn't work.
He's tried it already and it didn't work. I don't see any reason why it would now. But whatever.
I mean, we did. You know that. I don't know that. Too many injuries. So,
but they think there's people on this earth, like walking this earth, that think that the XFL is coming to put the NFL out of business. That's another thing.
That's hilarious.
People think that
the NFL deserves to be driven out of business probably, but they won't be.
Yeah, I think that
they're all gonna do it.
He's trying to capitalize on that fan base doing that, but B, he's also trying to capitalize on the NFL getting their, quote unquote bad publicity or whatever. He's already made a rule that all players must stand for the anthem, so you already know who he's trying to cater to.
My greatest wish on multiple levels is that on opening night of the XFL season, half the players take a knee.
Yeah, I will sign for that.
Yeah, but you said that the XFL before, was it you? I think it was you that said the XFL before. Like in 2001, if players took a knee for the anthem, they probably would have welcomed that back then.
I actually think because I think they wanted to be so different from the NFL back then.
Well, yeah.
If you remember, that's what they ran on.
They were right.
What they put out.
Renegades.
They were supposed to be renegades. They were supposed to be irreverent. They were supposed to be edgy. That's what the whole X was for. That was by the way the peak in American history for the letter X. Like everything was the X. That was when the X Games started. The XFL. And X meant you were really edgy.
Yeah,
you were a badass. If there was an X anywhere in your name, you were a badass.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're right. That was the whole point of the XFL, was to be like this irreverent. The NFL was old and stodgy and didn't want guys to do touchdown celebrations, and the XFL was going to embrace individuality. Yeah. So the irony of that, with the present day version where it's going to be all about, we stand for the anthem and nobody's going to be able to express themselves.
They're noble all of a sudden.
I think you just missed the entire, the irony. They have no concept of it.
Yeah. They also said if you had a DUI, you can't play, which means Johnny Manziel, who everyone would want to see in the XFL, can't play. Well, I mean, those people want to see him in the XFL.
They'll find a way to.
They'll find a way to get Johnny.
They're going to do that.
Howard, you just brought up talking about the players in the NFL taking a knee, protesting. Are you surprised this season in the NBA we didn't see more protests against social injustice? You think that kind of was tempered by the memo that was sent out before the start of the season, or was it not shocking the way things have gone?
So that memo that was sent out before the start of the season was a joint memo of the Players Association of Michelle Roberts and Adam Silver. So it's not like this was some top-down thing. The NBA does not do this. The NBA, at least under Adam Silver, does not. The NBA was not telling its players, don't take a knee. Mm-hmm. The NBA commissioner and the executive director of the Players Union, Michelle Roberts, together said, listen, we support free expression. We support your all efforts you guys make to be active and engaged in society and in various issues. But they said, but we do have a rule about standing for the anthem. had anybody defied that and decided to do their own thing, I would have been curious to see what the NBA really would have done.
Especially if it was LeBron.
Right. Because I don't think that they would have come down that hard on them. I think they would have found a way to, wave it away without, like, they would say, well, yes, well, our rule is our rule, but, like, they would have found a way. They were not going to castigate anybody or discipline them. I don't believe that for a second. It's not the way Adam Silver operates. It's not the way today's NBA operates. That no one did. You ask, am I surprised? I mean, on some level, I would have liked to have seen it, just because I think it would have been a powerful statement. And I think there's good reason for people to do it if their conscience leads them in that direction. And I wouldn't want anybody feeling inhibited from that. But I could make this case that what's happened in the NFL is showing that there are just enough people in this country, or there are factions of people in this country who they're geared, whether it's politically or just the way that they view and how they define patriotism. It did alienate them. It did piss them off. And as a business matter, maybe that's not the best thing for you. You want to appeal to the broadest possible audience. Now, does that mean you keep your politics in check? No. Have NBA players kept their politics in check? Absolutely not. They've been extremely outspoken about this president, about general matters of U.S. policy, about any number of things.
And
about
coaches too.
Right, and coaches too, and about issues of gun control, and about issues of police violence against unarmed black men. Like, all of these things, the NBA players and coaches have not kept themselves in check on these issues.
Right,
They've been outspoken. So here's the difference. In the NFL, where they've long kind of discouraged anybody from expressing themselves, the one source of expression that they could pursue that was symbolic and that seemed powerful just in its imagery was taking the knee. NBA players didn't need to, because they've been speaking out on this stuff all along. Like, does taking a knee during the anthem, however you feel about that as an act, whether you think it's respectful, disrespectful, whether you think it's patriotic, whether you think it's, whatever you think it is, whether it's effective or not, it is a very powerful image. But does that actually do anything more than what LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Carmelo and Chris Paul did when they spoke at the ESPYs very eloquently on issues of police violence, specifically?
If you ask me, I say, no, I equate it to being almost the same thing, and it's the same stance that they were taking.
Sure, it's the same stance, but actually it's more specific when you're saying it. Now it's because one of the problems that's happened with the NFL players was that their cause was distorted, willfully distorted, by people who didn't want to hear it, they didn't want to hear about the police violence. They didn't want to hear about the actual issues, so they turned it into something else that it wasn't. They turned it into an anthem protest as opposed to a protest against police violence.
Yep.
So by NBA players staying away from the symbolic and leaning toward the specific statements, both in just off-day interviews after practice if they were asked, or at the ESPYs or in other venues, they've taken a much more head-on stance. So they didn't need to take a knee during the anthem or do anything else like that. So, if anything, that's a positive about the NBA, where they already know that they have complete free reign to express themselves and engage on political issues with full support of the NBA, without resorting to something symbolic that could have been easily distorted and misconstrued the way it had been in the NFL.
No, I completely agree with you on that.
Absolutely.
A couple quick hitters for you before you go. I think we talked about it before you go. I brought up a Nick fan. Your thoughts on the team this season? Are they headed in the right direction for their rebuild? Are they committed to it? Because that's my thing. I'm not sure if the Knicks are truly committed to rebuild, because Kemba Walker rumors, I would make that move. But
no, the answer is they're never truly committed to a rebuild because they're the Knicks. Like, they don't know how to commit to that.
Dexter's just going to keep getting his heart broken until he learns.
All right, listen. Benefit of the doubt. Let me just give them some benefit of the doubt here.
Okay.
it remains to be seen how they're going to handle the next couple weeks before the trade deadline, right? We'll see. Like a trade for Kemba Walker would show that they have not learned from any of their mistakes of the past 20 years. That would be yet another one of those, grab the shiny object and give up some future assets because we see a chance to win the press conference and give everybody a momentary thrill.
Amen.
That would show that they haven't learned a damn thing. However, they are sending mixed signals right now anyway. As I'm sure you and other Knicks fans would agree. If you're not playing Willie Gomez, then what's the point? If you're playing Kyle O'Quinn instead, what's the point? If you're playing Jarrett Jack instead of Ntilikina in fourth quarters, or you're bringing in Trey Burke for that matter, instead, just play Frank Ntilikina every minute of every game at this point. Really,
right?
I understand, Jeff Hornacek, it's the first year that he is free to just do things his way. So it's almost like year one for him. He has something to prove. It's year one for Steve Mills, even though it's not really year one for Steve Mills, but it's year one for Scott Perry. Yep. Everybody wants to show that they're the ones who are putting the team on the right track. And so there's always a temptation to show immediate results, to say, hey, see, we're the ones who are getting it right. Mm-hmm. We got this. But I think you would agree, most Knicks fans would, that the better long-term path is screw trying to chase the 8th seed this year. Play your young guys, see what you've got, develop them as much as you can. If you lose, fine. You own your draft pick. It's a great draft. A top 5 pick could get you another franchise star to go with Ntilikina and Porzingis. Now you've got 3 building blocks for the next 10 years. That's your best path forward, clearly. Look, Courtney Lee, Kyle O'Quinn, we talked about earlier, it's really hard to find anybody to give you a first-round pick, but with the two of those guys together and some other contracts thrown in, maybe get you something of value from another team and maybe a pick in it. I would be exploring that. I see absolutely zero value to the Knicks trying to make the playoffs this year, unless you're Jeff Hornacek and you're trying to save your job.
Right.
I happen to agree with you, but I have to consider myself a logical rational. I think they're great dudes.
There are interestingly different factions of Knicks fans, as you know.
I'll say that.
There's the reality-based group, and then there's the delusional group.
Last week we talked about the Ball family. So I kind of want to get your thoughts on how they're, not necessarily just them, but how they're covered. Yeah. Because a lot of people, we have editors telling reporters to go cover them, even though reporters don't want to, allegedly. And it's just crazy, more crazy.
How was been asked to go with them?
What?
I have not been asked to go with them.
More crazy
this time of year.
More crazy than it needs to be. But I guess what's your thoughts on it?
So obviously Lonzo is newsworthy because he's the second pick of the draft and playing for the Lakers. His brothers are newsworthy because ever since those guys, all 3 of them were coming up, we've known that there was this family of, deep shooting, almost Curry-like, players out there. The stories about them started coming out a couple of years ago about these kids, these 3 brothers were amazing, blah, blah. But they're newsworthy. That's fine. And LeVar Ball is, obviously a showman and
an assistant coach
and a provocateur and kind of a lot of other things. So, there's no question of newsworthiness, right? They are newsworthy for reasons that are evident to anybody. Mm-hmm. There is a problem in today's media. Maybe it's always existed. Maybe it's more now because of the times we live in with social media and everything else. Mm-hmm. That I feel like the media has, to an extent, gorged on the Ball family.
So, as far as season goes, finals pick is not the Warriors there. Who do you have playing the Warriors? Who's coming that piece for you?
I know it's really dangerous to do this, and I never ever. And I would never bet against LeBron.
Oh.
But things are so bad right now. I'd pick the Celtics. I would certainly, if you asked me, Cavs versus the field, I'm taking the field. Maybe it's not the Celtics. Maybe it's the Raptors. Maybe somehow things start clicking in Washington finally, for God knows. For God's sake. Who knows? That's a team that's really frustrating. The Wizards, that team, they should be better than they are. The Bucks should be a little better than they are too, but maybe not at that level. But I would take the field over the Cavs right now, just because I think they're in a really bad place right now, both in terms of their actual personnel and the chemistry within that personnel. I think they may be in trouble for once.
Real quick, Jason Kidd fired. Did that shock you?
No. The rumblings have been around for a while.
Do you think he gets another job? We know a lot about what went down with him in the Nets.
Right,
yeah. That was. But do you think he gets another job?
I think there are 2 major factors working against Jason Kidd getting another head coaching job in the NBA. One is that he had these messy exits already in Milwaukee and Brooklyn. And he has a history of messy exits as a player throughout his entire career. That will count against him. And also, the NBA teams more and more have been going through more of these unconventional hires. So it's not always the ex-player, right? It's the Brad Stevens type or a Frank Vogel, David Fizdale, a career assistant type. Like they're going different directions. It's not like the ex-player moving just right off, onto the bench as assistants. Yes, and he skipped that step. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I'm not sure Jason Kidd's going to get another job anytime soon in the NBA. Not as a head coach, anyway.
Your thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets so far this season?
I mean, they've been what you would expect. It's
even
not
with the injuries.
Right. No. Well, even with the injuries, like. The one thing you expected was they were going to play hard and play together and move the ball and play at a breakneck pace and shoot a lot of threes and bust their asses and win games that they're not supposed to win just because some nights they're going to outwork you. And that's what they've done. And I said in October, I think I had said and even tweeted something like my lukewarm prediction, like it's not a hot take, it's a lukewarm take. But for the season, was that the Nets are going to ruin the Cavs pick. They're going to ruin the Kyrie. They're going to ruin the Kyrie trade.
I definitely saw
and
that.
They're ruining the Kyrie trade because that pick's going to end up being. Now, they could fall off a cliff and the pick could jump right into the top 5. But right now, they're ruining it. They're making it like an 8th, 9th, 10th pick.
Yeah.
In which case, like the Cavs, that's not why you didn't trade Kyrie to get the 10th pick. You traded for the chance to get top 3, top 5 at minimum. So like call credit to Kenny Atkinson for the culture that they have instilled there and the ethic that they've instilled in these guys. And, the curiosity to me is, do they now sell high on some guys? Because there are teams that could really use Spencer Dinwiddie. There are teams that could really use
Joe Harris,
Damari Carroll, who has certainly, I think, revived his career after a couple of really tough years in Toronto where he was mostly hurt. So you've got guys now with value that contenders could use, that playoff-bound teams could use. But if you trade them, I mean, those are also the guys we just mentioned are guys who are like, they're the epitome of your culture now.
Yeah.
Like that would be painful. It would be very painful for them as an organization to do, what the Rockets used to always do when Daryl Morey was just churning through guys until they finally got James Harden.
Yeah.
What the Sixers were doing, where you basically just look at guys as assets instead of as people. Like there's a certain logic to it, and it makes sense in terms of building up your roster and giving yourself a chance for more talented players down the road. But what does that do to the culture that you've just spent the last 2 seasons under Kenny and Sean Marks trying to build? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how you weigh those things against each other. It's a fascinating discussion when they're not about to have publicly. But I wonder how they're weighing that internally. Though.
Yeah, it's like you have Dinwiddie, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, D'Angelo Russell all cheap for another season after this year, which is a point that I keep making because soon you're gonna have to decide, who you're gonna pay and who not. And Karis LeVert after that.
I think it's less about who you have to pay and what that's going to cost in terms of payroll. I think it's more about who do you think are guys that are going to define your franchise for the next 5 to 10 years, and do the guys that you have now, if you flip them for picks, give you a better shot to either get a high pick who's going to be better than any of these guys.
Yeah.
If you're selling high, like Spencer Dinwiddie has been really, really good. He's been a revelation, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's never going to be an all-star guard, most likely, right? Very, very unlikely. If you flipped him for a pick that could become an all-star because, let's say, you ended up with the 15th pick in the draft and you aced the pick, right? Every so often, like Giannis was the 15th pick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Getting yourself a top 20 pick gives you a chance to maybe ace the pick and get a 10-time all-star. Does Spencer Dinwiddie or Damari Carroll or any of these guys, are they better value in terms of what they give you now and keeping them for the next several years, or are they better in terms of like that mystery of that pick that you might get? I don't know the answer to that.